Welcome to this new section. In this section, we will learn how to manage your business with Dolibarr. And the first step doing that is to creating your users, your Dolibarr users. Before start creating users for Dolibarr, I need you to have like a brainstorming session, thinking about all users that you need to access your Dolibarr installation. And let's say that you have a business, you have your employee who's handling the sales, and you have another employee who is handling the purchases, and you have some other employee who's handling, let's say, the point of sale. For each one, you have to think about them so you will know what exact permissions you are giving. And Dolibarr has another feature will help you organizing that, which is the users group. Let's say you have 4 employees who are handling the sales, and you want to create a group for all of these users, and all of them will have the same permissions by assigning these permissions to the group. This will help you to save time, to get more organized, and will give you extra control on the permissions you are giving to your users, to your Dolibarr users. Also, in addition to that, Dolibarr will give you the ability to give an access to an external users. For example, if you have Dolibarr installed on the web, on a web server, and you want to give an access for an external user, which is, for example, the vendor, and you want them to have an access to your Dolibarr so they can enter their proposals, their quotations. You can send them your requests, all these things. You can do that with Dolibarr, giving the external user an access to your Dolibarr installation. Again, you have to be very cautious about the permissions that you are giving to each and every user. You don't want some user to access a data they are not supposed to see, or they are not supposed to have a look at. For example, if you have like a purchasing guy, you don't want him to have an access to your bank accounts. If you have like a sales guy, you don't want him to have an access to modify your agenda, and so on. So first step in, let's go and create our first user. We can do that by accessing users and groups in the admin menu. Then we can click on new user. Here, as you can see in the list, before we creating, just one thing to mention, you can see here in the users and group the list of the users. If you press, you will have a log for all of the users that have an access to your Dolibarr installation. Here you have the hierarchical view where you can see who's reporting to whom. Let's say here the bookkeeper, he's reporting to Zach Zico, and David also reporting to Zach. Here the users and tags and categories. You can in this menu add categories to your users. First, let's go back and create our first user. His last name is, let's say, ERP. Okay. His first name is, let's say, John. And his login. Here in the login, you will the username for Dolibarr. The, let's say, sales one. Okay. The password you can create here. As you remember, in the security setting, we set the password to be automatically generated by Dolibarr. You can change that if you like. Is he an administrator? Of course not. What's the type? He's an internal. Here, as you can see, we cannot change that. For the external user to be created, we can create it from the vendor or the customer or vendor create adding page. We cannot create him from here. Then the gender, let's say he's a man. Okay. Is he an employee? Yes or no? Yes. Who's the supervisor? I will be his supervisor. When we assign a user to a supervisor, this will allow the supervisor to have the notifications of the activity of this user. So it will be helpful in managing and letting the supervisors know what's going on and what activities are this user is doing. We can add his address, his zip code, his country, his state, his phone number, his mobile phone number, his fax, his email. Here's the email. The email here, if we add an email, then this will allow this user when he or she is sending an email through Dolibarr, this will give them the ability to have their email as the sender email. So the receiver of the email will see their email when they as the sender. The accounting account. This we will discuss in a future lesson, in a future lecture. If we assign an accounting account for this user, everything, every financial transaction that he's, let's say, okay, let me explain this. This user, he will have two kind of financial transactions. The first one that will be logged directly into Dolibarr, like invoices, like purchasing orders that he's doing, all these things. And the other thing, which will be his salary, his expenses, expense report, like if he's doing a business trip and he applied for an expense report, these transactions, his expenses, his salary will be logged into this accounting account. It will make it easier for us to have a breakdown of the for the expenses of this user. The color of the user, you can assign color. This will help us, the selected color to be will help us to include it in the calendar and it will allow a better identification of the distribution of the events for this user. The assignment of the color will better organize our business, to better organize our events related to the users we are creating. Tags, we don't have any assigned. As you remember when we earlier briefly go over the admin menu of the users and groups, you can create categories and tags for the users. This also will help you to more organize your users. Note, if you have any note, the signature, when they are sending an email, okay, they will have their signature, like salesperson one, the address of the company, his position, his title, all these things you can add here. The job position, what's his title? The average hourly rate, the average daily rate, the salary. We can add salary here. As I said before, this will help us to manage the expenses of this user, of this employee. Okay, the hours per week, date of employment, date of birth, these are like the personal information about the employee. Then we will create user. Okay, once we create user, you can see that it takes us to the user count. This in Dolibarr, it called the user count. The user count, we can do also multiple things to our users. The first, if let's say we want to modify any of the information, we just click modify. It will take us back to the page where we can enter information about our users. Okay, then here you have the regenerate password if you want to change the password for this user. If you want to disable the user, you don't want him to have any more access to your Dolibarr installation, we just click disable. Okay, and if you want to completely delete this user, just click on delete. List of the groups for this user, we didn't create any group yet. This we will come to later. Now here's the important thing, the permissions. Permissions, the initial permissions granted to this user are the default permissions we assigned before. As you remember in our previous lesson in the security setup for Dolibarr, there was like the default permission tab. We assigned some permissions there, so it will be assigned to every new user we are creating within Dolibarr. And as you can see here, this guy has the access to the point of sale, to read categories. He's not able to create them, but he has the ability to read them. Okay, to read the sendings of the shipments, but he cannot create a shipment. Okay, he can read the delivery orders okay, but he cannot create a delivery order. He can read the expense report, but he cannot create. Let's say this guy is like a sales representative and he's going a lot of business trips for us, for our business, and we need him to create to report the expenses of his trips. So we will give him access to create and modify the expense report so he can log it into Dolibarr and then to be sent to his supervisor. Can he delete these expenses report? Here he don't have it, but we can assign this to other user, maybe his supervisor, so he can delete the expense report once they are, let's say, faulty, or let's say like they are not existed anymore and they don't need it anymore. It was entered by mistake. These things. For invoices, this user, he cannot access. He does not have any access to read the customer invoice. But let's say we want him to create. He's a salesperson. We want him to create the customer invoices. Once he can create, he can read also. Again, we have to go through these permissions, and to us, we can assign what exactly he needs. Here in the user display setup, this is a personalization of Dolibarr, how Dolibarr will log for this user. And import external calendar. If the user have an external calendar in our website or another service, we can import it from this from this screen. HRM bank, we can add the user bank account details by creating a new one. We can add the bank label, the bank name, the bank code, the IBAN number, the SWIFT code. Note, we can modify. If we want to add a note about this user, we can add it here. Or maybe a note for the user, we can add it here. The linked files, here in this we can change the, let's say, the picture of the user by browsing for here, attach a new file document. We can browse and we can assign a picture for him. Then we will send the file. It will be changed to his picture. The log, here in this log you can see everything this user has been doing on Dolibarr, on your installation of Dolibarr, which is important for security measures, to have all the activity of the users logged into your system, so you know exactly when they access the system, what they have been doing on the system, all these things. Thank you, and see you in the next lesson.